Hi, Joe Glavin at City Floor Supply. Welcome to our machine repair shop. Today we have, I believe, a machine that we haven't really covered recently, which is the Galaxy 2000. We're going to unbox it, show you what's inside. If this were ever shipped to you direct from us, you'll be able to get it set up and ready to sand in no time. So real quick, I already cut the lid up, but you can take a look inside here. You'll have to excuse my voice, I'm getting over a cold. So what we've got is 100 feet of cable. It's 10-3, non-marking. So Velcro strap to keep it together. Place it over there. We have a template because the 2000 is a belt drum combination machine, and I'll show you what that means when we get this out of the box. But it will take the old style roll cut paper. So this is a template to fit around the drum. And then we have a toolkit. And the toolkit has our dust bag. Has our operator's manual and warranty information. Has our carry handles, because anyone that's ever run a Galaxy knows that it's a heavy machine. I want to say it's like 105 kilos, which is like 220, 225 pounds. So I also have an Allen wrench, and that's going to help adjust our tracking, belt tracking. And then I have drum wrenches, and this is going to tighten up our paper when we're using the drum feature and not the belt feature. So, and I'll show you where these go in the machine. So we are going to see if we can. Yeah, let's just. All right, so as you can see, the Galaxy is a polished aluminum housing. It's casted. It's a really well-built machine. You can see just from the dust stack all the way down to the belt cover, just a quality-made machine. Very, very strongly built. And when we get, like I said, this is at least a 220-pound machine, just like this, let alone the shipping weight. But just as it stands, as you're looking at it, that's a heavy machine. And we'll get into a little bit about how the balancing of the machine for the cut takes that 225 pounds into account. And that's why these machines are known to be very aggressive, but yet have the ability to really taper off that drum pressure when we start talking about the control rod, drum pressure springs, and back pressure springs for each one of those settings. So again, we'll get into all that, but let's go ahead and cut this off here. Okay. So did I lose my guys? I did lose my guys. All right, rid of the skid. All right, so just a couple of things at first glance. Again, polish machine. The Galaxy 2000, well, we used to call it the 2000 Plus, but I guess it's the Super 2000 now, is 220 volts. This is a 7.5 horse motor. Most motors in the industry are going to be right around 4.5 to 5, and this being 7.5, I mean, you're looking at a 60% increase in power. The really unique thing about this motor setup is this is in-house wound. And what do I mean by that? I mean that Galaxy actually produces this motor. There are some motors on various other manufacturers' machines where they'll take the motor that a motor manufacturer makes, has some specifications for that manufacturer, they take it off the shelf and put it on their machine, where this motor is wound for this machine. Hence the 7.5 horsepower. It is also available in 50 hertz. We use 60 hertz in the United States. But if you want this shipped overseas, it would be 50 hertz. And it is available in, I believe that drops in horsepower, but I could check on that. So again, you know, the weight of that motor and then how that weight is distributed during the sanding process is really unique. The Galaxy doesn't use springs underneath for their wheel truck assemblies. In other words, the wheel truck doesn't disappear into the chassis to lower the drum to the floor. It actually pivots. And the pivot starts right there. So this is the pivot point, because this entire chassis, and when I flip this over, you'll see what I mean. This entire chassis sits over the wheel truck assembly and is held on with 2 pins. So I'm gonna flip this over, show you. So there's the second pin, both on each side of the machine. And when I flip this over, you'll see what I'm talking about. So you can see that this is all one cage, and it's cast, very strong, and the pivots are here and here. So as I activate the control lever, I'm actually moving the chassis over top of those hinge pins and evenly distributing that 225 pounds down to the front of the machine, which allows me to get phenomenal pressure when I want it. Here, as I crank this up, again, because I'm pivoting on these pins, this spring tension is pulling up the back end of the machine and sending it to the front. And it's that balanced distribution that makes the Galaxy unique. So when I have these settings, I virtually have a limitless adjustment, because I can start with no pressure and just use the standard weight of the front of the machine. I can even change that with no main drum pressure here set to bring this up and really get a feathering action for a light cut. Again, it's remarkable the adjustment in drum pressure that you can get from the Galaxy. Okay, so our wrenches fit just like this, and I'm going to show my age here, but if anyone remembers the old Clark 504s, or even before that, the Porter Cable F87s, this Galaxy 2000 is in line with that model series. So the handle, and what brought it to my mind was where these wrenches go. So, you know, these wrenches, I haven't seen wrenches like this since the 504 days. And that was an old drum sander that Clark made when Clark purchased the floor sanding division from Porter Cable. So the F87 is the precursor to the 504, and then the 506 and the 2000 and the Omega 8 are all after that from Galaxy. So those wrenches, again, those wrenches will be for the drum pressure, and we'll get into that in a second, but I'm going to still stay up here on the control handle assembly, and I'm just going to put the Allen wrench in its little spot. While I'm at the tools, you can see carrying handles. Now the carrying handles, they milled holes into the chassis. So this little dip here is to get around the belt side of the door, and this is for the flat side on the drum cover. So we're here and here, and we've got good position on the front to get this machine up. Again, this machine's a beast. It's a heavy machine, but it will sand some floor, that is for sure. Again, back to the motor assembly, two things I wanted to point out. It's 2 capacitor start, 1 capacitor for run, and this is, you know, where they're held here. We have our standard switch and a 30 amp inlet plug. We have these wing nuts and pins, so you loosen the wing nuts and pull the pins out. And then all we need to do is loosen up our motor. This is our belt tensioning screw. So if we counterclockwise, the motor's going to lower. I'll be able to get the fan belt and the drum belt off. And when the 2 pins are out, I can now carry this machine in pieces. So if I'm doing, you know, a brownstone down in Philadelphia, you can easily get to the 3rd floor. Well, not easily, but fairly easily get to the 3rd floor by taking the machine apart and removing, I'd say about 35 to 40% of the weight of the machine right in that motor. So while we have the cover off, let's take a look at these pulleys, because again, it's a design that it deserves taking note. We have poly V groove pulleys, or in the car industry, they'd be like a serpentine belt. And we have a 7.5 horse motor here. And if we can transfer as much of that energy to the drum and to the fan as possible, all the better. And the torque and transfer that these belts provide is exceptional. The surface area that the belt covers to give the torque, it's just proven. It's kind of why the auto industry uses them now instead of V-belts. We have a fully adjustable tension spring here for the idler pulley. So when I take the belt off, it activates the pulley. When I put it back on, it helps to track it. So, it's a great design. We have a huge fan in here. I think we get to 7,500 RPMs with that. And that depth of that fan and the diameter of it, of the fan itself, and the depth of the blades, we probably getting over 300 CFMs of pickup for that. So yeah, we've got really good dust pickup with this machine, which is going to actually bring me up to the dust tube, this dust stack here. So we've got a gasketed seal here, and then in the elbow we have 2 wiping gaskets. And this, again, we've got a cast and polished aluminum elbow, but this gasketing system is going to allow 0 dust leakage. So, but the other thing it's going to do is allow this thing to continually swivel. So when we have our dust bag attached, and it has and it's full of dust, we're still going to be able to move it, and we're going to be able to move it without any kind of leakage down here. So 2 gaskets and no dust leakage. It's another good feature from them. Let's see. Cord holder. Can put your plug through, your 30-amp plug through, tie in. You can flip it to both sides, just like you can move the bag to both sides of the machine, leave it in the front, depending on where you're cutting on the wall. And then we also have a feather handle here. So our feathering handle just kind of allows us to get a grip. We don't need to keep our wrist positioned here all the time. Guys would get a little bit numb there. So feather handle keeps everything square, keeps you behind the machine, and gives you the ability to keep both hands on the machine. So again, really well thought out, well built. We have a single caster wheel here. These caster wheels, the lateral ones and the rear one, I'll flip it over again and show you that. So both these lateral casters, fully ball bearing, sealed, and the rear one, the pivot one, also seal bearings. They are not going to degrade with solvent or any kind of debris that you're going to pick up. You know, again, just well built, nice stem bearings throughout. And when we get this back down, we'll take a look at the heart of it here. There we go. So what we have is, you know, everyone that's run a drum sander is familiar with the red rubber, natural red rubber. We have a 2000, the Super 2000 has a slotted drum. Again, we have a top roller unit in here, which I will take out. And it's meant to be removable. So top roller assembly, standard drum. We can run a belt. If we want to just run cut paper, you know, the idea here for the 2000, the Super 2000, is with the slotted drum, we're going to cut traditional roll paper, put it on here. We've got, I believe this is a 10-degree angle, which is about double what a standard American drum would have been at 5 degrees. The idea is less of the slot hitting the floor at one time, so a little bit sharper of an angle. And we've got shims in here, and we keep those shims in when we're running the belt so we keep balance on the machine. And we'll run that, we'll cut some paper and put it in there. But the you know, standard top roller, we've got guide rollers on each side to keep the belt tracked. And then we've got our regular top roller with a vulcanized rubber steel shaft going through with bearings on both sides, seal bearings on the guide rollers too. So this thing is buttoned up tight for, you know, a pretty dusty environment so that it gets the job done. We got a blocker here so that there's not too much travel from the top roller unit. And being able to just take this unit out is unique. Most of the other equipment, you have to disassemble the entire top roller unit and pull the whole thing out in order to get to this part. So this is unique to Galaxy, where this half comes out. All right. So again, metal side cover, good sturdy hardware, locks it in place. The cover is attached, so there's no chance of, you know, leaving it on a job site or you know, leaving it in the van. You've got, you know, it swings out of the way in order to access the belt. comes right back in. It does come with a dust sheave here to help with increased dust pickup. And I think that's it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a belt on. Let's see, I guess is that better? Is this better? You can see that going in. So lever up towards the belt guard, lowers the top roller unit. And I'm just going to put a belt. This is a belt that was in the shop. Just happens to be a Norton Blaze belt. And so what we'll do, and what I did want to show you was the tracking for this is really well thought out. With this top roller unit, we're able to track this machine while it's running. So most of the other equipment, you're going to shut the machine down, move something, take the cover off, adjust a bolt or something in order to track the belt left to right or in and out. And on this machine, if it's slightly untracked, I can fix that while it's running. So there's no downtime there. Not that there's a lot of downtime in adjusting a belt, but every belt, every box can be different. So when we put on a new belt and we check for tracking, you know, having that feature on the outside of the machine it's a nice feature. So I just going to take my standard socket wrench and or Allen wrench, and I'll adjust it. And that screw for that adjustment is over here, just above the belt cover, and that's what we're going to adjust our tracking with. So anybody that doesn't understand that, you know, tracking a belt, it's centrifugal force. So as that top roller changes plane and it's down, and by down I mean out, you know, from the front of the machine, it's facing to the outside, it goes down, that belt's going to track out towards the belt cover. If the top roller goes in towards the handle of the machine, then the belt's going to track in towards the chassis and the pulleys of the machine. Okay. So I have power to the machine. Check that I've got tension on my belt, and then I'm just going to toggle it and see where we are. It's like we're tracking in just a little bit. So again, think of this screw. If I turn this screw clockwise, if I turn the screw clockwise, I'm pushing the screw into the top roller unit, and I'm taking the top roller unit and top roller itself and moving it up. So I'm going to bring the belt in towards me. But if I turn it counterclockwise, it's going to send it out. So I'm pushing in the top roller and I'm pushing the back end up like that. So I need to come out just a little bit, and we'll see what that does. But again, I can keep that in there. I can run the equipment. I just want to make sure that I'm not flying off on my first you can watch this. That's it. So essentially I just tracked the belt. It was running full speed. Get a real nice feature for the unit. And we'll sand with it. I could sand with it with the door open just to show you what it looks like while we're sanding it. Well, you wanted me to go. Well, I can start here and kind of walk up, and then I'll turn around and come back. but I'm going to just do a light pressure setting here, so I'll be on 1. You can't feel the pressure through the camera, but it's very noticeable in pounds of pressure where I'm at there versus where I would be at here. And you actually can hear it. You know, I'm not leaving that go. That's probably the lightest the machine will cut. It'll really just kind of skip over the floor. If I take this off, again, this spring here, the longer spring, the smaller spring, is really for back pressure. Now I'm distributing that weight from the back of the machine on those pivot bolts to the front. And I've got, I mean, it's substantial. I don't know what the pounds are on the front on that setting. You just have to measure it with a scale. But so we're going to keep it on setting 1 and just get a light cut. And we'll do this typically when we're setting up a machine. Make sure it's cutting flat, make sure the belt's tracking, make sure there isn't anything, you know, out of kilter from shipping. And it's just one of the things that we'll do in the shop. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to sand with it. So again, we'll just make sure that the machine's cutting, not leaving any hard edges, and usually do that on the lighter setting just to make sure that we can see an even scratch pattern. We'll take the belt off. We'll take a look at the belt. You know, and then we'll see where, you know, from here to here, there's hardly any abrasive that's seen wood. And it's because this drum is tapered right at the end. And the reason that it's tapered is so that we have a softer edge when the machine is sanding, so that we don't get that hard edge line on the floor. Okay. So on the for the drum setting, I am going to use the wrenches, take off that, and this should work its way off. There we go. It's just new, you know, it's got to wear itself in a little bit. This gives me full access to the drum portion so that I can put cut paper on it. Let's unplug that. We'll use these wrenches. All right, so this is the shim. Looks like it's 240s. So, and just to let you know, typically the drum is balanced with this in it. So, factory balanced drum, you see how smooth it was cutting there. If I took this shim out, or some semblance of this weight, which isn't much, but it is weight, particularly on this end, because we've got a slot that's missing aluminum, a slot that's missing rubber, and then we have these two cams here. So this is an unbalanced drum that does get balanced at the factory because this sucker is spinning, you know, 4,000 RPMs or such, maybe less, probably 3,500. So we're gonna make sure that we put something similar to this back in, even when we're drum sanding. You just want to make up the space where your cut paper is going to fold in. And if people haven't put cut paper on a machine, a drum sander, in a while, you're going to want to practice it, because you have to get the folds right. And I may not even get it right here. I probably haven't done it in a year or more. Particularly because this is a 10-degree angle. So they give us a template. So we have our angle. This is a 10-degree angle that matches the slot in our drum. And these little notches, again, you know, harkening back to the days of, well, a lot of gym floor guys still use cut paper. So 12-inch roll, or 12-inch wide rolls, 50 yards. This is an 8-inch machine, so this is an 8-inch template. When we cut the paper, I'll show you what these notches are for. They're for the measurement of the fold. So we'll put the end of the paper here after we cut it, and then put this on top and fold it over, move this up, put the end of the other side of the paper on here and fold it over, and that should match our notch. Sometimes I cut the angles off, that kind of thing, just to make it a little bit easier for these cams to grab it. So not sure if we'll be able to see this. And the reason I'm going over this in detail is because not a lot of people run drum sanders anymore. But these cams have a flat face to them, and then they have a knurling tool that's used to give them the grip. So they're steel cams, and they're like knuckles, right? And as they come together on the paper, they turn the paper and pull it in and keep it locked, and it can't get out. So if you put paper on improperly, and the paper comes off at that RPM, it's pretty much going to sound like a shotgun. But anyone that's run a drum sander and blown paper knows what it sounds like. So hopefully that doesn't happen here. So we're going to cut a sheet of paper, put it in there, and then I'm going to have to play with the shims to see what's going to work for the grit of paper that I'm putting in. But if I go back to the belt, I make sure that I'm going to put this one back in, or at least some semblance of 40 grit, regardless of vendor. It looks like this is a cloth-backed product, so I use the same thing. So if the machine has any kind of vibration when you're running it, you may want to play around with the shims first, because again, this is a balance. All right. So we've got an 8-inch piece of paper here. Maybe I can show you. Yeah, you can see the difference actually. It looks like this roll of paper was used for a traditional drum sander, and you can see the angle difference here. If I put this on the corner and have everything lined up, here's the difference on the traditional drum that the paper has been cut for versus the Galaxy 10-degree angle, which is right here. So I'm just going to cut that off, give us our correct angle. For a second. All right, so these notches, what I was discussing with these notches. So you can see I'm going to come out to the edge of that paper there and split the notch, keep it even across the top, and then this fold here should be my fold at the proper angle. Whether or not this depth of the tab is correct really depends on how new the drum is and what condition the drum is in. You know, as the drum ages and gets smaller in diameter, this length could change a little bit. So you just need to know that. It's good to have the template. A lot of guys would just use the old piece of paper that came off of it because they know they work. So those are my angles, and then the idea obviously here is when it's wrapped around the drum, it's to match that angle there. And then these would be tucked into the cams or brought in by the cams. So you can see those little tabs there. Sometimes they get caught up on the cam, and I usually just notch them off a little bit. Thanks, Sean. Just keeps them out of the way. And what I had John do is just bring in some shims of various thicknesses that I may need as I put this paper on. So again, there's a lot of methods of doing this. Putting cut paper on a drum is kind of almost a lost art form, but guys that do it and do it right, you know, they swear they'll ever get chatter out of a drum sander because their paper is put on properly. So I've never really been good at it, but so I pop out what was on the top, put in the top, put in the bottom, and it looks like it's a fairly accurate cut on the template just by seeing how much is loose, you know, around as I spin this. I feel like I'm going to get a good pull on the knuckles. So what I might do when I first try this out is, you know, just pull the paper out just a hair and let those cams bring the paper in. Yeah, I'm not going to try that because it just seems too thick. Might try two of these guys. And the same for the shims, right? I'm going to leave them out just a little bit. And I get the cam started. You could probably zoom in here. I kind of want the tip of each knuckle to meet right where it's going to hit the paper and then bring them in evenly. So even pressure on the wrenches so that those cams grab that paper and really draw it in nice and evenly. So I got a little bit of spring back, which just means that the cam's not going to draw the paper in any more than it already is. So I could do a couple things. I could release the cams, take a shim out, but I feel like I'm pretty tight all the way around, and I have good roll on the knuckles. You can see my flat is, you know, almost 270 degrees from where it started out. So, you know, I've got good grip from the cam and that knarling that's on the cam to keep the paper in. So I'm going to put the cover back on. And the only other thing that I'm going to check for is to make sure that you know, my paper's not hitting anywhere, and that I don't have any pockets of looseness here, so I should be tight to the drum. awesome. Just gonna spin this to see if I hear the drum. Any paper hitting on the drum, I don't hear anything. So I'm gonna start it up. Again, I'm on the same setting, just a little bit up for the back pressure spring. And again, I'm just gonna test it with the RPMs. So, you know, immediately the first thing that comes to my mind when I just start that up after I put paper on it, cut paper, is how smooth the machine is in my hand. You know, it's always nice on a drum sander that's brand new when you put cut paper on it that it feels like it did when I had the belt on it. And a lot of times that may not be the case when it's an older machine. You feel a little bit of vibration from it just because the pulleys are worn, you've got wear in the bearing journals, on the shafts, just various stuff. But this thing starting up right after I put the cut paper on it, you know, it's smooth. Whether or not I sand with it smoothly is another story, but so you can see this is a brand new piece of paper, right? We've got hardly any cut here. You can see the blue on both sides here. So we are cutting, you know, inside. We've got a soft edge there. I don't feel any hard edges. So the wheel level of the machine, that is the lateral wheels on the machine, are set up from the factory just right. So again, it's just another nice feature about the unit. And you may see some paper where we got, like, it looks like we're cutting a little hard here and a little hard here. We may want to dress this drum just a hair, just so that we're cutting evenly, but I might sand with a little bit more than I did with just 2 passes to see if I start getting some cut path along where you see the differentiation from the outside here, these about 2 inches here to the 4 inches inside. But again, that's tweaking, and that's typically something that we'll do before a machine gets shipped, particularly on a unit that's going to be a belt drum combination machine like the Super 2000. So I would sand with it a little bit more, but hey, bonus is I didn't blow the paper off of it, which is a bonus. So again, that's the Galaxy 2000. I keep wanting to say Galaxy 2000 Plus. It's the Super 2000 from Galaxy. And cut paper. The idea behind the cut paper on the lower grits, the more expensive belts, as they are in lower grits, when you get down to 24, 36, some of them aren't even available below 16. So if you have a floor that requires your first cut to be below a 16 grit, then you're probably going to need to go to a drum sander. So if you have this unit, you would be able to get 12 paper or that rock paper, which was that 4.5. I mean, it's just really, really heavy grit. You would be able to cut that, put it on the drum, get the first pass done, and then go to a belt. That savings, you know, it's significant. The lower grit belts are more expensive, and if you buy it in a 50-yard roll, you get, I mean, this is only a portion of a roll, but 50 yards of that paper. Again, it's paperback. You can get that cut paper in cloth, which would even last longer. A lot of the gym floor guys will exclusively use cloth on their 12-inch sanders that are all drum. and they cut the paper for it. So belt drum combination, we've got a 7.5 horse motor. We've got infinite drum pressure adjustment. We have a unique balanced machine where our chassis is over top of the wheel truck assembly. And this is the only piece of equipment that has that. And we get a really even distribution of that weight. Again, 220 some odd pounds, 103 to 105 kilos. You know, that's a significant weight distribution that we're putting down to the front of the drum. So even weight distribution, 7.5 horse motor, Poly V pulleys for really good torque transfer from the motor to the drum. Hardly any slippage. A great dust pickup. Probably one of the best dust pickup machines in the industry. You're looking at over 300 to 320 CFMs on that fan at 7,500 RPMs. We have a double sleeved dust elbow for no leakage. And we have a machine's belt system that we can adjust while the machine's in full operation up at full RPM. Top roller that can be removed. The top roller, I would always run the drum sander portion, the cut paper portion of this machine, with the top roller unit up, as if you were running it as a belt that you were sanding with, so that you keep that arm away from the drum. And any debris that's going to get picked up doesn't get all caked up on it. All right, well, thanks for watching. If you'd like to purchase the Galaxy Super 2000, give us a call at City Floor Supply or look us up on cityfloorsupply.com. Have a great day.